So anyway, my name is Clarence Lowe. I'm director of the Peace Studies program at the University of Missouri. And my first obligation is to thank some of our sponsors. First of all, there's the Friends of Peace Studies, co-headed by Chris Robinson. I'd like to introduce Chris, who's sitting right up here, because he did a fantastic job, conceptualizing a program to honor activists that have done political work at the University of Missouri. And in addition, he spearheaded this very program and did a lot of publicity work. And Chris is one of the mainstays of Friends of Peace Studies. Now, Jack Kulchin is here. Right? Jack is also the co-president of Friends of Peace Studies. Now, our other co-sponsor is the Mizzou Arts and Science Alumni Association. Now, they're not usually in the business of documenting protests against the University of Missouri. However, they have an interest in engaging alumni and potential alumni. Now, how many of you are students? Oh, okay, fantastic. Because you pretty soon will be a distinguished alumnus or alumna of the University of Missouri. And the University of Missouri encourages all of you to take part in the affairs of the university. And through the Peace Studies program and through events that we sponsor and other departments sponsor, you'll be able to do this and join our particular alumni association or the alumni association of your particular department or program. Okay, now the transition to that is what the people that you have before you are a distinguished group of alumna and alumnus. No, that's right. But anyway, all of them, I think without exception, are PhDs, well, a JD and 3 PhDs at the University of Missouri. And have gone on to distinguish themselves in their careers. Now, students, I mean, you should, at some point, you will be 50 and look upon your years at the University of Missouri with wistful fondness for all the wonderful things that enabled to do throughout your long career. I know it's really hard to think like that, but I don't even have a job yet. I'm practically. You will be in that position. Many people are in that position. And this is to give you a sense of what it's like to look back at a successful career being an alumna or alumnus of the University of Missouri. Now, the particular distinguishingness of the careers of these folks has a lot to do with what they did at the University of Missouri. And one of the things they did, which may seem at odds with the mission of the university, was to protest the policies of the University of Missouri. The University of Missouri was investing in Southern Africa. And you have to go back to the time period. South Africa was rapidly becoming an outlaw regime. It was a regime based on race since 1910. And increasingly, movements, pressure was building to change that to a system of majority rule, which actually did happen. But it took a century of conflict and struggle to achieve that. And the University of Missouri played a very pivotal role because there was a movement to get United States companies and other institutions like universities and governments to not invest, to boycott South Africa because it was a repressive, extremely repressive and racist regime. This movement was picking up steam, and a very crucial part of what happened was that the University of Missouri is that the University of Missouri, through these student leaders, you were all students at the time, you know, without jobs, very vulnerable, just learning about the world. But they decided, no, part of being a student is to take a stand against apartheid, study the situation, and when they studied it, it demanded action and change on the part of the University of Missouri. And eventually the University of Missouri did divest from Southern Africa based on your pressure. So we have these folks to thank for getting the entire university on the right track, which it eventually did. They're here to tell you their story, which is about the University of Missouri. First of all, it's about the student movement, because those of you that were here at last year's event, we held a retrospective on the Kent State demonstrations in 1970. Huge demonstrations here after the shootings of unarmed Nixon students who were really expressing their First Amendment rights. They were shot at Kent State University. There was a protest on this campus that drew thousands and thousands of people. And we had a retrospective on that last, very, very emotional retrospective. A lot of the people who participated in that. I see Bill Wickersham in the very back, who was a young faculty and he's still very, very active in the peace movement nowadays as part of our peace studies program. Well, the context of this event is the student, the ebbs and flows and peaks of the student movement, which we'll be hearing about. The other thing we'll be hearing about is what a wonderful intellectual experience it was. Because what was being developed here was a critical pedagogy, a way of thinking about the disciplines and thinking about the world and being engaged in the world was very critical, very oriented towards social change. These were folks that engaged in the forefront of their disciplines, changing their disciplines. Okay. So there's the research focus here as well. And finally, we're going to go inside the social movement. A lot of you think, it's scary, it's like violent. Important issues are discussed. And there's a whole process within the social movement where you confront ideas with the reality of the times to figure out what changes things, what works, what doesn't work. And it's a very, very personal story. We'll hear a number of specific examples of people involved in this and what their roles were and what happened to them. And people were arrested. They put their futures, their careers on the line for this cause. And we're going to hear about what that was like from a person that was arrested and became a test case in the whole notion of whether people are free to express themselves through building a Shantytown on university property that demonstrates, an important issue, whether free speech should be extended to this very kind of open and public demonstration physically of what was going on in South Africa. So it's really the forefront of the law. We'll hear about it from an attorney, practicing attorney now who was a student, later became a law student. But anyway, we'll hear about all these things from the panelists. We have a particular order, but I think each of them will be addressing these different issues in their own way, some more than others. So to get right into the program, the first person I want to introduce is Al Dicharri, who is a professor of sociology at the University of Hartford. And he will begin his observations about the student movements and its rise and fall, and the place of this particular movement in the trajectory of student politics of America at the time. Thank you very much. Can we clap? Yes!
Yes, well, I'll start by saying I did have a job when I was here. I was pending bar in every bar in town, so I was working. hating it. But I guess I'm being called the context guy here. And I don't know why I'm that, but I think it's because I got here the earliest of the folks that are here. I arrived on campus in 1977. And I'm going to make comments that it's kind of a very mushy causality that I'm implying here, so I'm not trying to make any causal statements whatsoever. But what I'm going to tie this movement into what I was part of, which was the Department of Sociology. And the Department of Sociology at the university was carried a reputation of being a bit on the critical side. We know they were involved significantly in the 1970s protest. They were involved in the divestment protest, and the culture in the social department was a very, very open, democratic culture. Not only were the faculty very, very critical. Some would be called Marxists, some would be called critical theorists, some were really liberals, but there was a decided critical orientation everywhere. Whether they were medical sociologists, or they were demographers, or they were criminologists. And the graduate students were big pains in the butt, I think, in fact. So at a time before the protests, it was the sociology graduate students who published the salaries of the professors in comparison to the salaries of the graduate students and compared teaching loans to make the point that there was a bit of injustice going on in the faculty. You may recall this. And that attitude of agitation persisted. So we had movements among the graduate students to protest the comp and the qualifying exam systems. We caused great problems for the faculty because we were allowed to vote for faculty hires. And sometimes the vote went a direction that the faculty didn't quite like. So within the halls of the sociology building, which is now lost to the J School, much to my great sadness, we had a culture there that was very democratic, was focused on grabbing what you could and making things better for yourself and for others. Now, when I arrived in Columbia, I got here actually the day Elvis died, and which is true. I don't know what that means, but I remember this, okay? And I found this really, really boring, sleepy town. I mean, there was nothing going on. It was summertime, and I turned on KOPN radio, and they were playing a block of 3 hours of Indian religious music. And I was actually in Providence, Rhode Island before I came here and listened to the Ramones. So there was quite a shock for me. What did I do wrong? I took a wrong turn somewhere. And I think the way I frame this is that many of us were just burned out after Nixon. It was just a horrible, horrible experience with this country. And once he was gone, we kind of just, I think as a country, took a sigh and said, okay, let's just be nice to each other now and not mess around. I came here with a sense that this little town that was sleeping. And as I think back, and as I thought back, I found that it was the Reagan administration that got us fired up. It was the war in Central America. It was nuclear proliferation. It was a whole range of things that we felt put upon. John Ashcroft was elected governor and began to withhold 10% of the university budget. And even in the cities and towns, they suffered. I remember they closed libraries on weekends for a long time because they couldn't afford to keep them open because the state contribution disappeared. And slowly, people began to think that this is not right for us, and we want to do this. And I think that it was, and I'm not saying other departments in the place didn't do this, but I think in the social department, there was a real sense that we can do this. We have a history of doing this. We have faculty who put themselves on the line and with threats of being fired for Kent State. And when the anti-apartheid movement began, we had faculty supporting us at that level also. In fact, faculty were arrested during this time. In addition, there are just maybe some just common things. One of the things that the social department did for graduate students is they gave us keys to the outside door of the sociology building. And as I understood it, we were the only graduate students on campus who had those keys. So now if you were living in the Shantytown and you really had to use the bathroom, you were going to the social building. And so by means of just where we were and what we had, we were able to be a central focus of what was going on. Of course, one of the principal movers of the movement was Carla Weitzel, a graduate student who was with us then, and she really became the face and the voice of the movement. And I think she was a charismatic leader in many, many ways, but also she was very, very theoretical in her approach, and she understood exactly what she was doing. And she was living up to the highest ideals of the MU sociology department that had been created in the 70s and had persisted over and over again and had been transferred back into the graduate students who, again, were causing lots of trouble for their teachers as they made their way through the program. And I make a comment about that program. I know it's probably on the sidelines, but we've been talking about our graduate education now for the last 2 days, and one of the things that was beautiful about that program was that they brought us in and they kept us there. And they didn't threaten us with the loss of money, and they pushed us and they made us know when we were making mistakes. But we're allowed, and I've been using this analogy, we were allowed to graze as graduate students in this long, slow process of where we not only just learned our fields, and we learned some methodological and statistical skills, but we learned about the discipline and what it means to be a sociologist and the ethical obligations that sociologists have to be leaders in a society, to push people along using their skills and their orientation. And this is in contrast to the current generation of grad students who, because of the way that the profession has developed in academia, they're getting in and they're getting out. I call them the microwave generation. I mean, they're the hot pockets of academia to a large extent. They're learning a lot of stats, they're being pushed to publish, and they're getting out. I now am on faculty, and we hire a lot of people, and we see this, that there are a lot of really great people coming out of grad school who do a lot of really good things, but they can't answer the question, why are you doing this, apart from the fact that you need to pay off a mortgage or college loans, or you want to make a nice living. So we had, as I was growing up in the social department, an orientation that was really, really, I think, important. And I think it really helped to get that movement going and do the things that students need to see. I don't want to use the word vanguard, but I will. I think there is a real important point to be made that there need to be leaders. And leaders come in all shapes and sizes. Some are great speakers, some can cry on command, some can do all kinds of things. But leaders who are driven by theory and an understanding of how what they know can be used to make things better for people. And you might find opposition to those ideas, but who do those kind of things really benefit a movement. And I think that's the structural and the intellectual and the interpersonal foundation that happened here that made that movement succeed.
Sociology Department PhD program, and let's welcome Craig Eckert, who is now Professor Emeritus at Eastern Illinois University.
Thank you. And I'm proud to be a pensioner in Illinois. Hopefully the system doesn't go defunct before my checks are paid. And truth in advertising, I also want to mentioned my Cal, but I was gainfully employed. I was working at the Heidelberg, so I had that reputation. I was a bartender and proud of it, and slinging 4 beers to my friends in the graduate. Don't tell Dick Walls. Okay. If you've been around long enough, you know who Dick Walls is. I also want to do truth in advertising, that much more so the three of the people that are going to be presenting, Alan, Mark, and Catherine, were much more heavily involved in the direct behaviors and actions that maybe we'll explore today. To the extent I was involved, I was part of a group called the Democratic Socialists of America, as I was explaining to, which was the precursor was Democratic DSOC, and then it moved to DSA. And we were on the fringe ends of this, and it was just endless debates of left-wing politics about what we could do, and endless, and that's when you could smoke in the, so it was people lighting up cigarettes and wearing berets and faking this left wing, and I'd just be like, Jesus Christ, can we do something, and it was very frustrating. So that's the angle, I guess, I came at it. And so these people were much more intimately involved in the actions that we'll speak about. I'll just follow up on a few points that Al made, which I think are relevant and maybe will fit in with the other speakers as well. I think Al makes a good point that Reagan being elected was like kind of a catalyst, because it went up, that's what I wound up being influenced to write my doctoral dissertation on, because I was amazed, first of all, that he was elected, and then even more so that it was his second time. So I was totally perplexed by that, so that provided some kind of intellectual grounding for what I wanted to do my research on. So I think Reagan's election really was a catalyst to what the hell is going on with politics in America. The second thing, and I really emphasize something that Al's talking about here, is the graduate student context in which all this was playing out. In a sense, I think the blossoming of MU sociology was to produce dozens of leaders. So while you could, maybe the four of us stand for dozens of people who went through this program. And the most important thing that I think that it did for all of us is make sociology come alive. So I came in as probably the biggest outlier of the program. I came in from a program that was totally quantitative, totally number crunching. So, my friends will be amazed that I came in as like a stat person. Today, I couldn't tell you what a Pearson correlation is, let alone how to compute it, but I did know that stuff then. So the first 2 years that I was at Mizzou, coming in right after Al, I spent 2 years unlearning what I thought I knew. And I'm being dead serious, because I thought I knew what sociology was. And lo and behold, I get put into this context of the basement of sociology, and I'm coming to learn this isn't anything about sociology. I think I can do this with a real easy illustration. Most of you at Mizzou have an undergraduate research methods class, right? Where you learn basic methods, no matter what your major is. So I go all through an undergraduate methods class. There's like 5 minutes left in the semester of my undergraduate methods class. And this guy is a PhD in sociology. He's a demographer from the University of Texas. And what is his last statement, and most of the people are filing, it's like today, people are leaving 5 minutes before the club. Although we didn't have cell phones, we're bored, we're walking out. And the guy goes, oh yeah, you're going to study people, so you have to behave ethically. And like people are walking out the door like, knowing what the hell is that about? So the guy spends one sentence in a 15-week class talking about the substance of sociology, studying people, and because of that, that leads to all kinds of issues of ethics and morality and stuff. So that was the orientation I came in with. It. More important to just give out surveys, crunch numbers, and produce data. So when I came here, this was like just totally mind-blowing. Second thing that I'll pick up on that Al said, graduate students in sociology were in a really unique position. I'll give me as an example. I don't think I was even here my first year, and by my second year I was elected as a graduate student representative on a tenure committee. I mean, I was one of the newest graduate students, and to be holding a vote that was the equal of my graduate student mentors about whether a person gets tenure or not. If you know anything about that process, looking back, that was a whole lot of power that was being invested in graduate students' hands. And it just floored me that 1 year into a program, I'm being given that kind of power and that kind of right. It says something, I think, about the kinds of students I was interacting with. A third thing that I think is important here, and maybe Barb and Al and Catherine might talk about, is the graduate students themselves. We were lucky enough that we had students from Africa, we had students from, that had studied abroad, we had people in rural social, who had been in Central and South America. So we had this eclectic group of people so that we're coming at these kind of issues from such diverse standpoints. that I think was, again, particularly unique to the MU sociology program. I guess the last thing I would really emphasize was, and I wish my former student who works in Jeff City, who's kind enough, her and her husband are putting me up. She was my undergraduate student at Eastern, and I'm proud to say she came and earned her master's in sociology and now is very successful in state government. And she's talking to her husband, who's a PhD from Mizzou, and in sociology, and Brent is talking about tenure and publishing and stuff, and Barb goes, it's really weird, when I had Craig as a professor, all he talked about was living sociology, and using the discipline as an orientation to promote change, to better a community, to better somebody else's lives. So I don't think I ever talked about the kinds of things we were nurtured about, the importance of publishing, the importance of scholarship, and that's not to deny those things at all. I want to be very serious about that. Good scholarship is important, and it's the lifeblood of a university. But when we lose sight, I think, in sociology, about how important the things we can do and the insights we have that can maybe make a difference in producing generations like yours. As Clarence says, when you're 50 years past this, I'm going to wager people sitting down here today are going to make important social change. They're going to improve people's lives. They're going to improve people's community. And maybe it's something that when you were sitting in a sociology class or peace studies, it isn't just sociology per se, but to the extent any discipline promotes some kind of critical insights, that's important. Last thing is this. I can't say enough about the faculty in sociology because they nurtured that in all of us. And Al's point, which is so different from today, where graduate students were given a chance to blossom. So I was funded here fully for 5 years, okay? My oldest daughter was born here, right? Came back and got her degree, and I never wanted for fun. Sure, I had to be a bartender, but that was for extracurricular stuff. But and my son's sitting out there, so don't do anything there either. The fact that we were funded, we were respected in many senses. I said this morning when we were talking about our graduate experience. The faculty treated us much more like colleagues than they ever did graduate students. And I can tell you, because I was a chair, I've hired faculty, that is so unlike the experience of most people that I ever met coming out of a graduate program. And that is a tribute to the kind of support and the kind of people who mentored us through our programs. So that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Craig. I would like to think we can continue to help to have students make a difference. But our next speaker is Barb Grentz, who's professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I have to say one thing, she is just recently, as of yesterday, been awarded the Noel Gist Award for distinguished alumnus or alumna who's made contributions to the profession. So, we have awarded this award for probably about 8 or 9 years. We're waiting for the right person who is truly up there, and that person is Barb, and she's right here. So thank you very much.
First, I'd like to note I did get people standing to pay for the first year.
Yeah. Some things never change. No, really, this is a real wonderful honor for us all to be up here, and it's really great for the university to be recognizing all of those, us being just a small portion of the 100 people or more who struggled as part of the divestment movement between 1980, well, between the 1978, I think, is when people first went to the university, Black Students Association, and asked them to divest their holdings from companies doing business in South Africa. So it's great to be up here. We just played a small part in it, and I honor all the people who really worked hard on this. But it's nice to be up here because we were